Hello everyone, it's Mike Levin, August 1st, 2017. Here I am at, 33rd and Broadway, Tuesday morning, around 9 a.m. Heading into work, and I took 33rd Street this morning instead of 34th because there is a significantly different feeling between being that one block south. There's a very different feeling walking over to the west side from getting off at Penn Station based on whether you take 33rd or 34th Street. 34th is above the Empire State Building. 33rd is below the Empire State Building. And way over on this side, it really has to do with the amount of shopping that you pass that is both name recognition and, right on the sidewalk popular. There's a lot of not on the sidewalk businesses in New York City that you actually have to know to walk into, and sometimes go through a security desk and go up to another floor. I found two niche businesses in New York City, just from gradually being, drawn back to my childhood interests. Now that I'm in New York City and I'm near the mothership or mecca for so many things. I mean, one of the most on the surface or on the street level example is the Complete Strategist, which I got to know from, I believe, the Ardmore store in the suburbs of Philadelphia during the 80s, when Dungeons and Dragons and things like it were big. And I remembered my bicycle rides out to the Complete Strategist, sometimes with my buddy Ed Flacco, who introduced me to so much of what was awesome about first Commodore. He was a genuine Commodore enthusiast, being part of the Commodore 64 generation of 5.25-inch discs, shall we say, traders. And then later on, part of the Amiga generation, and basically part of a tag team duo that made sure I stayed well educated about what was actually going on. The other side of that really being Mark Rifkin, who now lives in California with his family, having gone to work full-time career-wise for one of the Commodore spin-off companies called Scala, where I tried to use Windows technology as my, career-saving safe haven, just to see active server page support and popularity in the industry gradually diminish and go away. And now I'm working at a publisher who still has some systems out there built on that generation stuff, and I know it. So it all comes around and becomes an asset again, which is good. And then all the stuff about the Amiga computer that I learned is eerily applicable to Linux and Unix world. And all this stuff like AREX and Scala script and all these other ways I learned to think and work and do things in a scripting environment became valuable to me as I realized that the one scripting language to rule them all, not JavaScript, Python, was just as completely love-worthy as the Amiga technology that I had fallen in love before that. So, it's like a Frogger game. I'm jumping from safe haven to safe haven. You gotta have a platform, you gotta have a tech. And the choice of that platform and tech is always an interesting thing because it defines these clouds of probability for you, who you're probably likely to work for, what type of work you're probably going to do, where in the whole software and hardware experience stack your expertise is going to fit. Oftentimes there's a big split between front end and user interface development and back end web services and microservices and calls between systems that don't really need human involvement. It's machine to machine in many cases. And then there's a world of people who live somewhere between the two, who really would love to use all the machine to machine efficiency and optimization and iteration aiding automation techniques, yet they're hand cobbling together data from various data sources, doing all sorts of dedupes and joins and cleans against the data, only to do yet another process and another process and another process, and they're lucky if they do it once. And these types of folks are usually like scientists working in Jupyter Notebook, again, in Python. So everything that's built that's supposed to be controllable through some sort of interface, usually a Python interface, there's a long tradition of embedding in simple scripting languages. TCL, also pronounced tickle, is one of the languages of automation from over the years. There's another one out there called Lua, which I believe is one of the many various popular syntaxes of Lisp, or derivatives of Lisp that are out there. There's Lisp itself, which is the automation engine behind Emacs, which is a very fine operating system lacking only a good text editor, for which there's evil mode, where all your skills jumping onto the Vim bandwagon will go with you, travel with you, and not be obsolete as you reposition yourself from the ubiquitous, the text editor that's everywhere and worth learning and knowing, and puts you into a class of hardcore old school badasses who can comfortably edit text and do development work and sysadmin and pretty much anything you edit text files for in Vim. There's a vague jealousy that you can detect off of people who didn't go the Vim route and have it in their back pocket as an ever-present tool, and they advocate the latest, greatest power tool. Some of these power tools are awesome, and they just don't see the payback for the enormous investment of becoming a Vim person when it's so besides the point, and you're not really going to do these generic sysadmin or DevOps operations all that much. You're mostly going to be working at the application layer, programming Python and making apps and stuff like that. So why leave your coddling IDE environment? Well, there's no reason to, but again, you define the probability clouds that surround you, the types of jobs that you can tackle and attack, the diversity of ways that you can divide and conquer a job, whether making things run in parallel concurrently is part of your repertoire or not, whether you have to be on particular vendor versions of things which you have to pay for and which are have restrictive license burdens, or whether you can be on the free and open source world, and whether or not due to GNU licenses, stuff you make money on, you have to contribute code back, like the old Linksys router. So there's a lot to know, and you just sort of have to, survey the landscape and adjust your current decisions to create the probability clouds around you, so that you qualify for the type of work you want to do, so that you can earn the sort of salary you want to earn, so you can be a specialist in areas outside of programming and also do your own programming when it's called for, or if you want to be a career programmer, implementing someone else's vision whenever they come up with you, and you having to be the real genius thinking through all the fuzzy, nuanced edges of the problem, feeling more and more like you should be the owner of what you built and not the bozos who had that high-level idea, which really are a dime or a dozen. We are all geniuses. Those brothers, I don't even remember their name right now, that's telling, right? The brothers who sued Facebook, that high-level idea stuff, dime a dozen. I've had so much of that stuff, it's not even funny. Running into someone who has all that it takes to implement that idea all the way through, including team building, identifying talent, managing complex systems with lots of moving parts, and dealing with the business end of it, the technology end of it. And when you say the business end of it, that's loaded. It's another one of these words, like I talked about, math and artificial intelligence and programming are really terrible terms for what they really are. That was yesterday's video. You can add to that business, because business is not really what you think it is. It sounds like, oh, boring, writing business plans. No. Business is taking that thing, whatever it is that you have a passion for, and finding a way to turn it into your income that often involves finding and keeping customers. A la Peter Drucker, the mission of any company or organization, or cause for that part, is to find and keep customers. Call them what you will, followers. But essentially, they are your base of people from whom you can, rely on for either two things. One, recurring revenue based on your existing business model, whatever that is, annual upgrades, subscription fee, service contracts. And, the accountants like that. It's highly predictable and forecastable revenue, income, etc. But then there's the wild card stuff, because, if you're standing still, you're dead. So you're always experimenting with stuff. And that aspect of business is an iterative relationship cycle between you as the service or product provider you bring to the picture, whatever it is you bring of unique value that others are willing to pay for, and your customer base, your followers, your fans, who are users, who are giving you money, who are engaging in as close a relationship as there is between people shy of being married. This is why such passions revolve around products from Microsoft and Adobe and the great proprietary, technology overlords of our time, who keep tempting us in with better and better power tools. Sometimes even having to do a 180 on their proprietary view on the world just to remain a seat at the table, as Microsoft has done, including the Ubuntu Linux kernel as part of Windows 10. And other moves that have been done out in the industry. Their open sourcing of everything that everyone loves about VisualStudio.net, but in the free and open source world for doing Python code. I believe it's Visual Studio for Python, so even Microsoft is pulling out all stops, getting into the proprietary world, actually being a member of whatever that is, the Linux Open Source Foundation, which implies certain levels of support for that part of the industry that people were genuinely surprised Microsoft was throwing their hat into that arena. So guys like me, guys and girls like me, are adapting to the rapid change. There's the machine learning stuff all, out there sort of percolating, gradually changing the systems we have to interact with. And the determinism of API systems is actually being reduced. And as the maker of software that sits in the middle, you have to make your stuff more robust and intelligent and adapting to change and alerting you to warnings and, just to keep pace so that you can tweak your systems to keep pace with the evolving APIs that get kooky and different and sometimes cumbersome, as do Google's, to support all edge cases. And then there's also really simple, straightforward APIs that, it's so ridiculously easy to do that it's hard to imagine why you wouldn't automate against it. So you reach out for these little rewards that are all around you, you knit them together, you give them a context to run constantly, high reliable, that makes excellent utilizations of the small bits of recurring resources you dedicate to it. That's my work right now. And you stay tuned into it like the spider at the center of a data information web, living in the moment, doing the right things in the moment, but also having feelers out for what might happen in the future. reviewers of what happened in the past, creating for you various indexes and analysis techniques, and connecting the dots between it all and making the right decisions, a series of good decisions that collectively produce more outcome, better productivity than the disjointed approach that is the pitfall if you don't think through things this way and do it with a sense of where you're going. So that's my ramble today. Thanks for joining me. Hope to talk to you soon. Don't forget to subscribe.